I'm Steven.
And I'm Spencer. Welcome to Ragnarokast, your podcast for all things marketing and MarTech.
Hello, everyone. We're the co-CEOs of Ragnarok.
Well, hi there, Colin. Welcome.
Hi. Great to be here with you both.
Thanks for coming on. Would you mind introducing yourselves for our lovely audience today?
Sure. So I'm Colin Nederkoorn, founder and CEO of Customerio. I grew up in Singapore and London, and I went to college at RPI in upstate New York. I've lived in Houston, Boston, New York, and now I live in Portland, Oregon with my wife, 2 kids, and 5-month-old yellow lab.
Adorable. It's like an American dream right on the podcast for this right here.
Cool. So, Steven and I are co-founders, obviously. If you listen to the intro, we have a founding story that maybe we can talk about if we have time. But as founders of a company, it'd be great to hear your side of the story. I don't know if we know your story, so it would be great if you could put it in your own words.
Sure. It's late 2011. That's when we started kicking around ideas. And my co-founder and I were working in New York at the time at this venture-funded startup. I was head of product. My co-founder was head of engineering. And we explored a few different ideas around real-time analytics. And we started talking to some companies we thought would be great customers. But the feedback that we kept hearing was these companies had like 10 tools that would show them what people were doing inside of their product. And where they really needed help was trying to influence the behavior of those people. That was their big pain. And so we thought, what if we built on top of the best ideas that we were seeing in this like new wave of analytics products that we're starting, but instead of used that data to generate charts and graphs, we use that data to try to trigger messages instead and nudge people towards things like converting from free to paid or taking the next step in an onboarding process or coming back to some product that they had abandoned. And so the first version of Customerio we built, which was, it was a lot of smoke and mirrors in the very early days, like sort of mid 2012. But the first version, the whole focus of the product was all about triggered emails. And we evolved from there to support, every channel you might want to reach customers on and any type of message you might want to send, like broadcasts or transactional messages as well.
Interesting. So you're coming doing that around 2011, right? Which is essentially at the point of which we are still very much in the coming into or very close to the acquisition of Salesforce buying out
Exact Target.
Exact Target, yeah. where like Responses and all these, what we now consider kind of legacy platforms. Let me clone my SQL database to your marketing system and have the thing, refresh 6 times a day or something like that, right? There was some real there were some real challenges to doing like triggered email or automated email. Mm-hmm. So you kind of mentioned you sort of stumbled upon it from kind of like an analytics perspective, but was it, you were also kind of maybe also addressing a gap in the market, which was, at the time when maybe like Sale Through was starting out and these like maybe event-based first or event-based triggered, platforms were really kind of nascent, not really popular at all at that point.
So we were really naive. I had never heard the word Exact Target when we started. Didn't know what Responses was. I think and I started to hear those names after we had written code, after we had the first version of the product. But the gap in the market that we were trying to fill was the company that we worked for used MailChimp for our newsletters, and we had SendGrid that was integrated into our application. And so there were these triggers in the application that were in code written by developers. The opportunity that we saw was like, why are we using 2 tools that essentially both send an email? And B, it sucks for our marketer that they have to ask the development team to like make a change to one word in an email that we're sending to customers. And so we saw this amazing opportunity. This is just data that's like, there's the logic for when to send a message, but if we can pull that out of our code, then the marketer can change it whenever they want. And they can log into a system and they can see how it's performing and all the metrics. From there, we kind of pulled on that thread and said, hold on a minute. If in order to send these triggered messages, we need to segment the customer base and segment all this data. But isn't that what a newsletter is? It's like a targeted, you have this group of people who are inactive users and you want to send a newsletter to them. Well, hey, we've got all this data. You can do that too. And so we just kept pulling on the thread from that initial realization that a product company should probably be using one tool, not 2 or 3. If you pull the data out, you can then empower the marketers.
Yeah.
And so to make it about us, the whole thing's about us. No, to make it about us momentarily here is and then bring it back to a new question, which is when Ragnarok started, we were doing something that we felt at the time was needed, which it was. But as time moved on, as time marched on, we started shifting. We called our product, but really we're a services company, but we shifted our services around how the market was changing, how the tools were changing. And we continue to do that every day because, we exist because of the MarTech stack. And it's something that we have to do every day is innovate, get new certifications, figure out new platforms. When partners like yourself add new features, we have to make sure we're up to date on that and trained. But, with all these changes, so we started in 2012, just slightly after you. Well, I'm sure you started personally before 2012, but maybe you look old for your age. I'm sorry. But how do you through that time, how have you found that the founding principles, because obviously best in breed is much more appreciated now. People aren't sending stuff through SendGrid, maybe they are, I don't know, but hopefully not. Now that a lot of the things that you're talking about have been adopted, how do you find yourself, how does Customerio find itself staying true to its sort of initial mission, continuing to solve problems that surface today, if that makes sense?
One of the benefits of the problem we decided to try and solve is that it's so big, and part of the problem is a tooling problem. Part of the problem is it's internal to companies and how they are trying to solve these problems. So I don't think our work will ever be really done. But the foundational stuff that drives us is that we believe that the best companies, great companies, want to communicate with their customers in a way that feels really personal, that reflects a deep understanding of every prior interaction that their company has had with that customer and respects the customer as well. And that takes work as the world gets more complex, as the ways that customers interact with companies gets more varied. People are going into a store, they're talking to people on the phone, they're interacting over email, text, and all of these different channels. It's more complex to manage. And so our work has never felt like it's done. Oh, we nailed email, good. We can pat ourselves on the back and stop there. No, now all of a sudden push is really more important, and in-app notifications became really important. That's the thing that we stay true to, is that we're trying to help companies not look foolish, right? Not look like they have no clue that you're as a customer of theirs, you've interacted in all these different ways, or you had a problem with the product, and all of a sudden they're emailing you something that seems totally tone deaf. And I think that the data is there. It's possible. It's just a question of having the capabilities and the time and the knowledge to set things up in a way that really makes creates that one-to-one experience that between that, if you as an individual look at someone's profile and all of their history, you can make really thoughtful decisions. And so how do you build automation? As a business, how do you build automation that feels like that? That's the mission that we're on, and trying to help our customers achieve.
So as an extension of that, so your customers through your platform are able to activate on all this data that they have about their customers. But this could be advice, general advice, or just your own methodology for this. But how do you and your team keep your finger on the pulse of not necessarily just what your clients' customers want, but your clients themselves? What how is the market moving? What are the pain points that they have? Kind of like we talk about like a cultural fit almost for you and your customers. How are you kind of keeping your finger on the pulse there and adapting to that?
The challenge that we have is that we serve the broad market horizontal. And so we've got companies that are early stage starting up. And the benefit there is what they're asking for, oftentimes at a certain level of maturity, what they're asking for is what later stage, more mature companies will be doing in 12 months. And so we get a lot of great input and we get pushed by a lot of our, earlier stage customers. But then, it's challenging definitely to keep iterating on the product and building it for this market horizontal. But a lot of times, I think similar to the well-known consumer tech companies like Apple, we're taking input from a lot of different places, and then we're synthesizing that and making decisions about what we think our customers are going to want that they don't know how to articulate yet, and we're building towards that. You get into a trap if you build exactly what customers are asking for, and we made this deliberate decision early on that we wanted a lot of customers rather than having 10 really big customers, because we didn't want to get the product destroyed by listening to our customers. And so you listen, you got to synthesize it and then build what they want, not what they tell you they want.
Right.
And we always like to say here internally that it's called customer success for a reason and not customer service. They're two very different processes and ideologies. I hope I don't get lampooned for saying this, but the customer is not always right.
Wait, what did you say? Can you say it one more time for the crowd?
No, but I mean, obviously, it's collaborative. Like if you just do everything that the client says, then you're going to end up with a product that's like Frankenstein because 7 different people told you 7 different things, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I think you just have to go a layer deeper, right? When they say, "I want this," you say, "Why?"
Yeah. And
then make sure you really understand what the root of it is, and then solve that problem.
Yeah. We are everyday users of Customerio. We are practitioners. We're fans. We've been using the platform for 6 years now. In contact with your team for 6 years now. You don't have to convince us, but for the general public out there, how in this day and age, how are you standing out from your competitors? Like, what is in an increasingly crowded market? Stephen sent me an image the other day, or sent the team an image of the MarTech space, and it's like it gets bigger and bigger with smaller and smaller icons all the time.
Yeah, it was Scott Brinker's latest state of MarTech NASCAR slide that he puts out, and it's so there's so many now. You have to literally zoom in multiple times to actually read the logo. It's so many now.
But that said, Customerio is clearly successful. So what's worked for you anything you're willing to share publicly that to help stand out from the crowd?
I think a lot about where we sit in the market. And one of the choices that we made was we wanted to bring enterprise grade functionality to like an earlier section of the market. So one of our approaches has been to try and help companies early in their life and then grow with them. That's worked pretty well for us. Like with the type of product that we have, there's an upfront lift to integrate it and get it working within your stack. It's not by design, but there's some switching costs there. We want to work with companies as early as they can, and help them be successful and then continue to grow with them. When we don't work with companies super early on, then we can still close them later. And one of the ways we differentiate ourselves in the market is like, you can sign up for a trial. And that's sometimes that's a signal that this is not the right software for you. I think in our case, a lot of folks, especially more now, the practitioners are part of the buying process. And so when they hear from a vendor, you can't see the tool until you sign the deal. That makes practitioners uncomfortable. They want to kick the tires and they want to at least explore a little bit. And so just having that, knowing that that's available to people, helps us stand out in the space or in the market. And I think the other thing that we've done early on is we've been globally distributed since before the pandemic. And so we were able to offer, we have a pretty big international presence. I think something like 50% of our revenue is in the United States, but the rest is all global. And we've had our customer success management team has been globally distributed. Our technical support team has been globally distributed. And our site reliability team, the folks keeping the infrastructure up, have been globally distributed. And so we can have someone, if not in the same country as our customers, at least in really similar time zones. So we've got CSMs who are in Dubai. We've got CSMs who are in New Zealand. And that gives us the ability to deliver a really high degree of service that's very local to customers that we've been able to do since we were smaller. And now we're a little bigger. We're still not huge. We're like 250, 260 people. But we've been able to really provide a very competitive service by delivering enterprise functionality super early, being global before we really had the size to be able to do that, and just being very accessible to customers so that they really know what they're getting when they buy from us.
And I have to say, whenever I'm vetting a new platform for us internally, I drive a very, very hard bargain. I'm like, listen, I'm not buying this unless you provision me a trial account. And I want to say that 9 times out of 10, it works. Just saying that out there. I'm very glad that you already have that in there, because people like me would be a pain in the butt if you didn't already have that. So I think, before we move into some of the technical questions, one big thing is, you've had a brand refresh recently. What was the thinking behind that? Like, what was the impetus, and how do you feel that's going to affect things going forward?
The way that I've thought about our brand over the past few years prior to the refresh is our product maturity was really high. And our brand maturity was kind of low. And so there's a big disconnect between what we could offer to customers and how we were talking about ourselves. And my ask to the marketing team about a year ago was, help me bring that into parity so that the way we present ourselves to the market reflects the quality of the product that we're selling. We did this refresh that came out, I think, about a month or two ago now. And the whole goal there is to just make sure that companies feel really comfortable to do business with us, and that it's just a pretty normal maturation as a company grows. And it felt like it was time for us to invest a little more in the way we present ourselves to the world. I've always had this aspiration, like, I want to build a world-class company. I think we are a world-class company at this point, and I want the brand to reflect that, so that whether it's a large enterprise or a early stage company, when they look at us, they're like, I want to do business with that company, and the brand gives me comfort, and is not like, hey, that's a little too quirky, or there's not I think it's important to have personality, and so we were able to retain personality. We made decisions like, I refuse to be a blue company. Like, there's so many blue SaaS companies out there, and didn't want to be a blue company, so we're a green company. But we were able to retain a bunch of personality, and I feel really proud of how this reflects the work of our team and who we've built, or I guess what we've built over the past few years.
Yeah, I have to say, we're kind of in the same boat, right? We wanted to be a purple company. We were an orange for a while, then we became purple, and now everybody else wants to be purple. But we set the trend, like
we did.
We're purple first.
We were way ahead of the curve there.
Oh yeah,
I think purple's a great color. That was our old primary color. It's still a secondary for us, but I love purple. It's regal.
Very regal. And I'd have to say the name. I mean, it's funny because I've worked with lots of clients who use Customer.io, and they don't call it Customer, and they don't call it CIO. They just call it Customer.io. So everybody knows where to go, right? Like it's easy to get to. The brand is the destination, so to speak.
Yeah, and when we bought the domain in 2011, we were just fortunate that this word customer was available on the .io TLD. And we've had the opportunity, I mean, we own customerio.com as well, but we've had the opportunity to get customer.com, and it just doesn't do anything.
No, yeah.
The customer.io that's our identity. And I think for a long time, companies, as you mature, you buy the .com, but there's unless we do a name change, it doesn't make sense to buy a .com.
Right.
And so we decided to just own it.
I mean, it really fits. It is definitely one of those things where it's like it used to be Amazon.com and now you call it Amazon, but it's Customer.io and it's always Customer.io or Customer.io. It's one or the other, right? Like, yeah, I see the cadence there.
Choose your own adventure.
We are in the unfortunate camp where Ragnarok.com is owned by some guy who won't give it up. In the last 10 or 12 years, we've been pursuing it. So maybe one day we'll get it. But
as you were saying that, I literally just looked it up, and it still says this page is under construction, coming soon. So I think last I checked, it was someone in, I believe, Metairie, Louisiana. Might have to make a trip down there at some point.
Yeah. Just go knock on doors and be like, hey, can we buy your domain from you? And it's like, it's going to be some grandma who doesn't even know she has it, type of thing. And
I would love to know how grandma didn't even realize that she owned Ragnarok.com, but that's a different story.
You could try leasing it. Have you tried asking about leasing the domain?
Oh,
there's a 10-year lease.
Look at you. No, I actually didn't even know that was a thing.
I'm sure it can be done.
We're still Ragnarok NYC, even though there's only 4 of us in NYC at this point. The rest of us are kind of like yourselves. We're global. Steven moved to Philly. I'm in Durham, North Carolina. We have a Spain team. We have people in the Philippines. We're increasingly, and a bunch of people in Austin and in Texas. So our URL is ragnarokmarketing.com, but it's still our email address is still Ragnarok NYC. Mm-hmm. And I'm I'm holding out for that Ragnarok.com, but it might be a pipe dream.
But maybe we get one on the lease,
Yeah, maybe we can get it on lease. I don't know. If you're out there, Ragnarok.com owner, please give me a call. So before we move into some of the questions we have about CDP, one quick thing is, so Colin, this is new for us as well. We're really interested to hear about it. Could you tell us a little bit about Parcel?
I think a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, we acquired Parcel, which is a code editor for email. And if you use VS Code, you can kind of think of it as VS Code, but totally designed for email developers with all of the tools and assistance in there that you need if you're writing email code.
Like an advanced MJML, sort of.
You could write MJML in Parcel. Some of the things that Parcel has are so you can run your tests in different clients right in Parcel. You have a bunch of email accessibility stuff baked into Parcel as well. And it's just it's totally designed for the email developer. There's approval workflows in Parcel as well. Everything you need to write an email from scratch, Parcel is great for that. And so the reason we acquired Parcel is one, we think that community is amazing and we wanted to support that community, and two, we wanted to sort of start with that as an amazing foundation and build the layers on top of that. Recently, Parcel just released their block-based editor. If you're an email developer, you build these blocks that are in your brands that adhere to your brand guidelines. They look perfect. Folks on your team can now add these blocks to an email. They can drag them around and they can customize the blocks as well, customize the content and tweak some of the design as well. And so what we're building towards is, we saw this gap where a lot of the block-based editors, they start visual and the code underneath is really messy. And so we wanted to start with code that developers would be proud of and let them control the amount of flexibility that other folks have. So, designers can design, developers can develop, marketers can, create the content in there. There's an approval process, and what ends up coming out of the other side is like everyone has the control that they want at the right part of the stack. It sits alongside Customerio journeys, but over time it'll be more deeply integrated into journeys. But our commitment is that you could use Parcel, if you started with it today, you could use all of this technology and export the content or export the messages and use them with another product. And doesn't have to be part of journeys.
What we see a lot in the space is, maybe a little bit more of that movement towards like a be-free editor, right? Where it's much more visual kind of drag and drop. And it seems like you're going a little bit more towards the more sophisticated, we'll say, marketer or developer marketer who's, actually going to continue to write HTML code. And there's obviously a lot of trade-offs there. One kind of main thing is in sort of the drag and drop editors, they use an excessive amount of code to do something that could be done with, a third less of the amount of code, which may not seem like a lot of impact up front, but Gmail and these other clients have clipping rules around literally reading how much HTML you have, and that will significantly impact how much you can actually include in a message. There's obviously a lot of philosophies around that, but I'm curious why you wanted to go more down this like something that's maybe a little bit more coder friendly, or has more of that reputation of being a coder friendly platform compared to something more like a Be-Free, which is like the non-coder friendly version of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity is that you can solve both of those cases. Mm-hmm. So we'll have great customizable defaults that someone can, they would come in, they might upload their logo for their company, they might set some default colors, and then they can drag in our default blocks and customize them to their heart's content. So that's a pretty similar experience to what people get in these more traditional drag and drop editors.
Yeah.
But except underneath the code is all clean. And so when they then decide, hey, I actually want to get a little more sophisticated here, I want to customize this footer block a little more, they can drop into code should they need to do that. I think it'll provide the best of both worlds. I mean, we'll see what roadblocks we hit. I'm sure there are reasons why the code in these visual editors, it becomes a spaghetti mess.
Yeah.
But our aspiration is that we're going to serve both the I never want to touch code use case.
Yeah.
And the I really care about the quality of my code use case.
Yeah.
So that's the holy grail we're pursuing. I think the other thing to note here is we've got other content creation experiences like our in-app notifications.
Yep.
And so our plan is to use the same editing experience to power both of those things.
That's awesome. Yeah. I always really admire you guys for very early on having your like templating system in place where you kind of have like different, almost like scripts, I guess, of different structures, whether it's your header, it's your footer, it's your actual like content itself. We've seen that, more modern platforms, a lot of platforms kind of added on those features over time, but that almost came native with Customerio. So I always love that you had that kind of like scale first mentality around the building operation, so to speak.
In the initial approach, I was really inspired by Jekyll, which was this like,
yep.
Like you would separate the style from the content, and the content was typically written in Markdown, and then you would wrap the style around it.
Yeah.
And so I was really inspired by that. And I thought, why wouldn't email be built that way too?
It makes a lot more sense. Yeah. I remember that being one of my favorite things, and learning about it and being like, wow, this is really cool. Like, why doesn't everybody else do this? And then, a few years later they did. But yeah, you guys were definitely at the point of innovation there. So speaking of innovation, there has been this long standing thought process that marketing automation platforms will turn into CDPs, and CDPs will turn into marketing automation platforms. I think Twilio beat us to the punchline on that one with sort of in the Twilio Engage segment, or sorry, SendGrid and Segment product kind of coming together and forming what was, sort of I'll say kind of a bit of the pioneer in that space. Obviously, there's been some other smaller players in there, but they're certainly one of the largest ones. And you have now kind of entered the same thing. You sort of built a separate, almost like, well, I mean, it's part of the core platform, but you're sort of packaging it as a CDP. And it combined with Customerio, it very much feels like a CDP, right? Because you have the kind of audiencing and the sort of user and segmentation capabilities combined now with the pipeline intake. I've always found you guys have been very flexible with the way you take in data. You have one of the best out of the box Salesforce integrators out of any marketing automation platform that's not Salesforce or a traditional B2B tool. And so I think there's, a lot of, it almost feels natural for you to kind of go in that direction. But, I also know on the other side of this, like you're a huge partner of Segment. A lot of our customer owned clients are on Segment. When you're kind of thinking about the CDP product, how do you think about it from both, a capabilities perspective, like, what problems are you trying to solve with your clients that you weren't seeing completely filled by the market? And then B, how does somebody choose between, like, when are they, at the point of like, this is probably somebody who needs more of a traditional, more of a legacy CDP, or somebody that's been in the space for a lot longer versus what we have to offer? Like where are you kind of positioning your CDP product?
Maybe it's helpful to talk about why we ended up building a CDP. We saw that when companies were using a CDP in front of Customerio journeys, they were more successful. They were sending cleaner data into the product. The data was just in a better state to use a product like journeys.
Yeah.
However, over time, we saw that the CDP market was getting overfunded. There were too many players, and there was all of this pressure to raise prices. And I think it became just a very customer hostile place where a lot of companies that were coming to us stopped using CDPs. They were coming to us without integrating a CDP. And they were looking to us to build features for them like data warehouse importers or SQL importers. And they were looking for more of that flexibility from us rather than using a CDP in front of us. And so for a long time, we absolutely recommended, and still recommend, that companies use a CDP in front of journeys. When we looked at what capabilities, as the space evolved, there were all these differences in what CDPs did. And so one piece of it is this like real-time streaming data integration into your product. Another piece is the data warehouse integrations. And then another piece is application integrations, like to pull data out of a CRM.
Yep.
And I think those are the three main ones. Do you guys see anything? Did I miss anything there?
I think from like the data transfer space for sure. Yeah, I think that covers it.
And then you have identity resolution. So making sure that when you're pulling in from data from three different places and it's all about one person, you can all associate it with that one person.
Yeah.
And so we're downstream from that. And we wanted to, inside of Customerio, ideally, when you have a profile and you have data about a person, it's all resolved data and you don't have a whole mess in journeys. And so when we looked at what we had built, we had to build infrastructure to collect a high volume of real-time data. We had built some of these integrations into data warehouses to pull data in.
Yep.
But we were missing a few pieces. We didn't have any transformation capabilities to associate this value here with this identifier, or this key here with this key here. And so we built some of that and exposed and released our data pipelines product.
Yeah.
The goal there was really like, we want more of our customers using a CDP, not fewer over time. And for us, this is like our Costco doorbuster. Like it should be really easy for people to get started. We ideally want them to use this and not think about it.
Yeah.
We got the pricing wrong initially. And so we're in the process of updating the way we think about pricing in data pipelines. But we think that over time, there will be 100% of our customers are using this infrastructure. And then there's going to be a subset of customers that use journeys and a subset that don't. And it was really important to me that this was not just a way to lock people into our ecosystem, that this was like an unmet need in the space of for our customers and our prospective customers. And if they could use this alone and get value from it and connect to Braze and get value out of that's fine too.
Got it. So you sort of envision maybe not everybody is now like a I think you call it the journey platform. I think of it as like the email or the sort of channels that you actually activate. You can almost be just a data enrichment engine as opposed to where people do their marketing out of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the best experience is when people are using Parcel, they're using journeys, and they're using data pipelines all together.
Right.
However, it's really important to us that you could use one of those pieces and get value. We see that today, and we've had customers, I think like for us as different acquisition channels, we've had companies start with Parcel and then buy journeys later.
Yeah.
We just want to be in the consideration set, and we think we can provide value in a bunch of different ways so that it gets us in the conversation when someone's contract's up for renewal.
You don't necessarily need to be the one size fits all if they just need a certain portion of what you do.
Yeah.
I have to say, one of the strengths that we've seen in the data pipelines product, especially early on before it's kind of been released under that branding, was just how you handle object data comparatively, especially compared to a lot of other marketing automation tools out there. It seems to always be one of your significant strengths. And very interesting, I would say, is that, you kind of built that, again, pioneered this sort of way of thinking about how to handle like product data or Salesforce data. Ultimately is where we end up seeing a lot of it in, and having a way to kind of leverage that within an email marketing system that, maybe didn't have so many consulting dollars attached to activating it. Not taking a jab at Marketing Cloud, but am at the same time. So just curious, like, as you think about kind of the future of that, kind of data pipelines or just the CDP product, like what are you kind of thinking about? How are you thinking about keeping it relevant for the market and your point, whether it's, you being the journey activator or you being a pass through to some other tool, what does that kind of future roadmap for you look like?
Yeah, I think the Salesforce integration is one of our most recent things that we've done. I'm really proud of that as well. The team did an amazing job, and it gave us an opportunity to connect the work we were doing in around objects to help model all of the complexity that's in Salesforce.com.
Oh yeah,
and made for a really cool experience. To you can pull in your opportunities, you can pull in whatever it is that's in Salesforce.com, you can now create objects in Customerio to store that data and then activate it in journeys if you like.
And that's a big B2B use case for you guys as well, not just for brands.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think, and when we built objects, the easy mode version of that would be you create companies and accounts and profiles.
Yeah.
And you just add that one layer. We decided to do it the harder but more flexible way, where you can add multiple things, and it's up to you to define what those structures might be and what the relationships are to other data that you have.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I think that's one of the big differentiators for us between like other platforms in the space, is that is like a big selling point for us when we're talking about Customerio with potential Customerio clients.
Cool. Good to know.
Again, as you're now kind of servicing, 3 different, we'll call them like major product verticals. But at the end of the day, is it changing who your customer is, or your customer IO is, sorry. But, like you've always kind of catered to the marketing team, the lifecycle marketing team. We've come across many clients who have development resources in there, have product resources in there, but the core buyer is marketing team, right? Are you sort of starting to, as you kind of go through these acquisitions and also plan out, a bit of that product roadmap, how are you kind of catering this sort of future state of customer IO? Are you sort of broadening who the customer is, or is it, still at the core, it's sort of that life cycle marketing team?
Data pipelines branches off into their peers who are responsible for data, rather than just the person creating automations and writing content. I mean, those might be two people, those might be the same person in a company.
Yeah.
And then the person who's writing email code might be another person in there. And so I think as companies go from one product to multiple products, it's a big risk to try to serve and so we're not trying to do that.
Yeah.
I think that would take our attention away from serving our core customer. But it's really the folks who are in the room that are evaluating journeys are the ones that we're serving.
Yeah.
And, that's the data team. That's the developers who might do the implementation. That's the designer who's making sure that the messages that get sent look good and are on brand. It's all of these folks around the process of sending really great messages to a customer that we're building for. And we'll continue to expand like that. If you see more products from us, but there'll always be a connection back to this is about creating great experiences for the end customer of a company.
Yeah, and it seems like with a lot of the stuff you've been working on, that could be B2C marketing teams, B2B marketing teams, product teams. There's a lot of different teams that at the core of what you said is that they're sending messaging, whether that's to acquire new users, bring users back, have them try out different features. At the end of the day, I want to say it's one big team, but I think it's great that it enables, especially the B2B side, which is really cool to me, allows maybe whether it was the intention or not, but a larger section of a company to use your tool, which is great for making yourself sticky and also just making for consolidation exercises, rather having like a Marketo and a this and a that. You can kind of all combine it together, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned earlier in the episode, you mentioned best of breed. I think we started trying to be a best of breed tool. And I think what we've seen over time is that companies really, they want you to solve their problems broadly. And I think that my hope at the time was that there would be this amazing stack of best of breed tools. And what we don't have control over is what happens to our partners. And so partners need to sort of buy into that idea. And there's certainly companies that we really like working with, but I think for us to provide this end-to-end experience for our customers, then there's a lot more value we can provide on the data side, on the design side, on the coding side, that if we purely rely on partners, we may not be able to get there for our customers, and that's letting them down.
If everybody stayed in their lane and, stayed the course, it would be a lot easier. But of course, some people get bought out. Others try to be everything for everyone, and it doesn't work out. So Stephen and I deal with this on a daily basis, which is just the delicate prediction of what partners are going to do and what companies are going to do. And sounds like you guys have the same challenge. Mm-hmm. We're pretty much out of time here, but I would say, Colin, thank you so much for joining. For those of you who have just joined us, I doubt there's anybody that skipped to the end in Spotify, but we talked about Colin's origin story, Customerio's origin story, and most importantly, a lot of the new products that they're going to be releasing or already releasing and are kind of iterating on, including their Parcel product and their CDP product. Stephen, is there anything that you want to close us off with here?
No, I just think it's amazing. I mean, Colin, obviously you've been in the space for, over a dozen years now. It's just been really awesome to see your guys' evolution over time, especially in the last couple of years, just what significant changes and growth you guys have had. And just excited to be a part of the journey with you. Like I said, Customerio has always been one of our favorite platforms. I think you mentioned yourselves as small, but you're very mighty. And I think you have a very good tool, and it works, and it's very scalable. And I think that goes a long way in not only acquiring and keeping customers, but also in just being a kind of a leader in the space, which is where we see you guys. And so excited that you're continuing to kind of move up in the enterprise market a bit, but still maintaining and being accessible to somebody who wants to graduate into more capability, but isn't quite ready for the, maybe the price tag that comes with a more sophisticated tool. So I just got to say, we love having you as a partner, and just really great to have you on the pod.
Yeah, thank you both. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right.
Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Colin.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.